Here's three different hypothetical price scenarios that I have on my mind when it comes to Enjin. In an event where maybe there is, let's say, maybe even a fully fledged type of altcoin season during this cycle, and even though nothing I say is financial advice, what is the first scenario that I do want to explore? And that is maybe the idea of Enjin at $1, which is nearly a 16x from here, and the market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, it'd be nearly 2 billion. Now, why wouldn't this necessarily surprise me? It's because I like the fundamentals when it comes to Enjin. When it comes to Enjin, it allegedly gives developers and creators the ability to launch Web3 games and applications, which I think is really cool because if I take a look at more specifically blockchain gaming, I still like it, even though sometimes people like to say, oh, the hype kind of disappeared ever since 2021. I'm kind of aware of that, but then at the same time, I still kind of like the future maybe of it. However, only time will tell because, for instance, right, according to Grandview Research, the blockchain gaming market is expected to be worth over $300 billion by 2030. I think that's pretty massive, and I think, if anything, Enjin has kind of showcased that even after 2021, it's still kind of viewed as one of those projects out there that I often at least think about when I think about blockchain gaming. Again, of course, when I take a look at back at that time, I still think about Gala, I still think about Enjin as of right now. Sure, there's other, new projects out there that kind of emerged, right? But then I still like Enjin's sort of presence nonetheless, and I like the market that it's focused on. However, we also have to take a look at kind of what Enjin has been able to do historically speaking, because again, historically, I've seen Enjin been involved with Azure Heroes, which is Microsoft's blockchain-based digital badge rewards program. So that's pretty cool. Again, Microsoft is very massive, so I kind of like that aspect when it comes to Enjin, at least again, historically speaking. However, also on top of that, what I do like about Enjin is that there's something called the Enjin blockchain. Now, when it comes to the Enjin blockchain, I get it, it's not the most popular out there, but keep in mind, it is supposedly purpose-built for games and applications. So it's pretty cool, and I kind of like the focus of it. Granted, there's many, blockchains out there, right? But then I just like the whole concept of this nonetheless. However, even besides that, Enjin isn't only just focused on gaming though, because we also take a look at its aspects of kind of like, I would say, arguably NFTs and the metaverse. Now, when it comes to NFTs, I get it. People like to say, okay, who cares about that? Like, when compared to back then. However, yet again, according to Grandview Research, because, they like to predict things, by 2030, the NFT market is expected to be worth over $200 billion. So I find that pretty cool. Also, if we take a look at the metaverse, right? I get it. Again, sometimes people like to say, okay, who cares about that? Well, even according to McKinsey, the metaverse could reach up to $5 trillion in value by 2030. So I think that is pretty interesting as well. However, again, only time will tell, but I just like the whole vibe overall when it comes to Enjin. I like the amount of holders. I like the community. Again, I just like the fundamentals, and maybe at the price of $1 wouldn't necessarily surprise me in an event where maybe there's even, let's say, a fully fledged type of altcoin season, but only time will tell. However, the second scenario that I do want to explore is maybe the idea of $1.25. Now, that's nearly a 20x from here, and the market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be around 2.3 billion, so nearly 2.5 billion, right? But again, around 2.3 billion. However, even besides that, when I take a look at that market cap, it doesn't feel like it's maybe too ridiculous to me. Like, if the market cap needed was like 100 billion or something like that, then I wouldn't even think about that at all. But then, again, this isn't like too overly massive in my perspective. Like, for instance, Shiba Inu reached around $40 billion in market cap, and that was back in 2021, so years ago. Now, granted, sometimes you like to say, oh, this is never going to be as popular as that. I'm totally aware of that, but again, that was what Shiba Inu reached years ago, and it's like nearly 20 times more than this, right? So I'm not necessarily saying that it is like, going to be the next biggest thing of all time or something, but then that market cap just doesn't seem like too ridiculous to me. But again, this is just my perspective. However, even besides that, the third and final hypothetical price scenario that I do want to take a look at is maybe the idea of $1.50, which is nearly a 24x from here, and the market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be around 2.8 billion. The reason why this maybe wouldn't really surprise me is because I take a look at kind of the, factors right now when compared to back in 2021. Like, for instance, in the peak of the 2021 bull run, there was around 300 million crypto owners. which was very impressive actually at that time. But right now we have over 600 million. And what I find even more impressive about this is that we have this many right now, right? Like, I mean, we haven't seen Bitcoin hypothetically at 150 grand, 200, 250, or 300 or something like that. We haven't seen Ethereum at 10 grand. We haven't seen, I think, maybe a fully fledged type of altcoin season during this cycle. And we already have that many. I just kind of find that very impressive nonetheless. However, also on top of that as well, I take a look at the Bitcoin ETF, the Ethereum ETF, so I just like the whole vibe overall during this cycle. Now, only time will tell. However, if the altcoin season, if it ever even happens during this cycle, if it looked better than back in 2021, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me, and maybe Enjin at $1.50 wouldn't necessarily surprise me either. However, even besides all that, sometimes people like to say, okay, what is the timeline? Now, for me, I will not be able to know the exact moment in time because how can I? But then at the same time, I can at least take a look at some clues from the past, and I think maybe it could give me a little bit of a glimpse as to maybe what could happen, but it doesn't mean it will happen. It's just what I learned from the past. Now, historically speaking, altcoins usually, as a worst case scenario, I've noticed, they typically peak around a year and a half after a Bitcoin halving event. So if we consider how the last Bitcoin halving event happened in April of 2024, so we're talking about last year, right? We had a year and a half on top of that, or should I say 18 months. That's October this year. Does it mean it's going to happen? I don't think necessarily exactly at that time because who knows? Because again, that is just based off history. Maybe it could happen later. Like, who knows? Or if it ever even does, like, hypothetically, maybe November, December, even January of 2026, or like February or March or something like that. I mean, again, only time will tell. But whenever that timeline is, I'm not going to be able to know the exact moment in time. So instead, what can I do? I'm not telling them to do anything, but personally, I'm just dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting. So literally, that's about it. I am not about finding the exact moment in time. I'm more so about just preparing for a moment in time, if that makes sense. I've been holding Enjin for quite a while now. Again, one of my first videos ever was actually about Enjin. And again, I totally understand that ever since I was holding Enjin like years ago, ever since then, many projects out there have hypothetically outperformed it. Totally aware of that, but I just kind of feel like I made it this far. I just don't want to give up like that. But again, I'm not telling you to do anything, but I've just been holding Enjin for quite a while, so I'll just wait and see. And it is what it is. I knew that with my strategy of just, dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting, I knew there was going to be a lot of waiting involved. So again, I was aware of that. However, at the same time, all I can really do is just stay patient. So that's what I'm going to do. I treat it like a marathon. It's not a sprint to me. But again, I'm not telling them to do anything, but this is just my outlook when it comes to Enjin and what I'm doing personally speaking. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.